Rachel's son, her oldest child, is a lot like her. He was a relatively calm toddler who liked to sit and read books and just snuggle in and talk about life. It was easy for her to connect with him, and they had a great relationship. Then along came Sally. Sally was a whirlwind. She was wild and crazy, she made messes, she got into trouble, and she climbed all over everything. Rachel really had no idea what to do with her. Here's Rachel.
I was feeling disconnected from her and feeling bad that I was feeling disconnected from her. And so I mentioned that to my counselor, and she said, well, you need to engage with her where she's at a level she's at. What does she like to do? And I said, well, the only thing she loves is like making messes and climbing all over things and Frozen. She is obsessed with Frozen and princess dresses and wanting to look like Elsa. And then my counselor surprised me when she said, you need an Elsa dress. And I was like, I need an Elsa dress? And she was like, yes, you need an Elsa dress.
This is the How She Moms podcast, where we talk about how different moms solve the same problems. I'm Whitney Archibald, a mom of 5 kids myself. I collect ideas so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how different moms connect with their kids. This is really the big why behind motherhood. We all want to connect with our kids. It's the payoff for all the hard work and sacrifice. Sometimes it comes naturally and easy. Sometimes it's more complicated. And sometimes it's unspeakably hard. But even then, we keep trying because that's what moms do. On that note, let's get back to Rachel's story. You might recognize Rachel as the host of the fabulous 3 and 30 podcast. When we left Rachel, she was about to buy herself an Elsa dress.
As I was scrolling through the different Elsa dresses, I just could not stop laughing. And that alone completely lifted my spirits and got me out of this place where I was feeling discouraged about my relationship with my daughter, and just made me feel lighter and more playful and joyful, and thinking about how funny it was going to be to bust out in this Elsa dress. So I ordered one, and I ordered her a new one. And then one day I put it on and I just came out in the Elsa dress like a queen into the living room. And she was amazed, of course, and thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I gave it to her, and we played Elsa, and we would turn on Let It Go and pretend to build ice castles. And she loved it so much that like at 7:00 in the morning every day, she would bring me my Elsa dress and we would play Elsa before the day even started. And it was just a really fun way to connect with her. Like, it brought the kid out in me and it made me laugh. And so it really did help me to feel more connected to her.
I love that story, and picturing Rachel coming out in that Elsa dress. Just so great. That was one of the best things about researching for this article. I got to catch a little glimpse into those little connections that moms have with their kids, both the big things and the small things. But the moms that I talk to are not doing all of these things at once, and they're not doing them perfectly. Many of the ideas I'm going to share would not work at all for your situation or your personality or your family dynamic. I do hope you'll find 1 or 2 simple things that will be easy to implement and try with your own kids, and maybe some of the bigger ideas will inspire you to come up with your own big ideas. As I researched this topic, the ideas kind of started organizing themselves into 8 different tactics that moms use to connect with their kids. So the first one was to plan connection opportunities into your routine. Sarah's dad was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, so of course he's full of great flying analogies. When Sarah and her husband got married, he counseled them to always make sure to create meaningful takeoffs and landings. Here's Sarah, who happens to have a cold right now.
He likened the comings and goings of our life with takeoffs and landings that a pilot performs in flight. And so he would talk about how important the takeoffs and landings are. They're crucial to the success of a flight. And so it is with us when we are sending each other off for the day or greeting each other at the end of the day, how important it is to make those meaningful for each other as a spouse or with our kids, just to help them face the day, all those challenges. You know, being able to be sent off well can help them do that. And as well as they come home, you know, everybody comes home from a long day. It's just nice to be greeted from whatever you've been doing and just take that moment to make it meaningful and interact. They're quick, but a smile can go a long way for anybody.
To kind of go along with this idea, my friend Lisa always makes a conscious effort to make sure her eyes light up when she greets her children. She tries to be enthusiastic and excited to see them at the crossroads, first thing in the morning, when they come home from school, or anytime they walk in the door. This is a great example of how we can incorporate connection into our daily routines, our comings and goings. Part of it is just a mindset change, making sure we keep connection as a top priority and making it a habit. Molly has 6 children, so it can be hard to give each of them individual attention. A few years ago, she started trying to connect one-on-one for 3 minutes each, 3 times a day. This may sound like a small amount of time. That is until you multiply it by 6. But even 3 minutes of undivided attention can really help a child feel noticed and loved. Molly's kids have really responded to even that little bit of extra individual attention, and Molly enjoys it too. I used to make the rounds every night and snuggle each of my 5 kids in turn and, spend a little time talking to them. They loved this. I was faking it. Don't get me wrong, I really do like to snuggle with my kids and talk to them, but nighttime is not the right time for me. I kind of check out as a mom after a certain time of night, and I am just done. I don't really want to be touched. I've been touched all day. I just need a little space. Once I admitted this to myself, I was able to solve the problem because I still wanted to snuggle my kids and have that one-on-one time with them. So I just switched it to the morning when I am a much better person and a much nicer mom. So now I snuggle them awake each morning and we talk about the day and what they're excited about, what they need help with. It's a lovely way to start the day. I'm excited to see them. They're excited to see me. And we have a great little snuggle. This works much better for us. Rachel and her husband Paul are bedtime snugglers. They do what they call talkin' time, which I think is so cute. They take turns and switch off which kid each parent snuggles with that night, and they just talk about anything and everything. And sometimes it lasts 10 minutes, sometimes it goes longer, depending on what they have to say. If they ever miss, their kids notice, and they say that it's their favorite time of the day. Emily also lies down with her kids at bedtime and scratches their backs and talks to them about their day. She has 8 children, so she has to pick a few kids each night, and she tries to identify which ones might need it the most. A lot of the ideas about bedtime routines applied more to younger children than to teenagers, but teenagers go to bed too, and bedtime is usually the best time to catch teenagers at home and connect with them. My friend Joyce is one of my go-to resources for teenage advice, as I'm just starting to enter that world. She's also the calmest person I know, which you'll notice when you hear her voice.
It feels like raising teenagers is just like a contradiction waiting to happen because, on the one hand, I feel like it's so important to have structure and routine and predictability in that aspect, but then it's like if you're not flexible, you just lose it, And so, for example, we try and maintain bedtime even through teen years. The phones get checked in at 9 o'clock, and they're allowed, books in bed or to work on homework. But we try and have 10 o'clock bedtime. But if sometimes when they turn in their phones at 9 or 9:30, then they chat and talk until 11. So then I guess to have to set routine, but also be willing to be flexible when you kind of sense that they're opening up.
Joyce also connects with her kids by integrating them into her exercise routine. She shoots hoops with her boys before school or takes them on a run with her. Some of the best conversations that they have are while they're exercising together. Dinner time is another obvious time to connect with each other as a family. Van's family likes to play a game called Glad, Mad, and Sad when they're sitting around the table. They go around the table and ask everyone to talk about one thing that made them glad, one thing that made them mad, and one thing that made them sad, parents included. This gives them each a chance to talk about what happened during their day and to talk about being grateful for the things that made them glad, and to coach each other through the situations that made them mad or sad. Joy came up with a really fun way to get dinner conversation going. They play a game where each family member gets 3 poker chips. The goal is to get rid of your chips by asking someone at the table a question, and it can't be a yes or no question. Joy blogs at joysfunstuff.com, and she also has a great Instagram account at joysfunstuff. We've all heard all the research about how important dinner time is for families and for children, building their confidence and making them feel well adjusted. This has actually been a sore spot for me for many years because dinner time is not the most pleasant time at my house. There's always somebody who won't eat the food that I made, somebody who's fighting, whining, complaining. It's hard just getting them to stay in their seats. My husband's schedule rarely allows for him to be home at a reasonable dinner time, so it's just me and the kids eating, and really I'm more of a referee. We're not having deep, meaningful conversation as a family. I was able to kick the mom guilt about this when I realized that we just needed to find a different time to connect as a family. So what we usually do is we gather around the fire in the living room at about 7 o'clock each night. My husband is usually home by then. We have a family devotional. Sometimes we'll sing a song, but we'll always read scriptures, discuss them, say a family prayer together, and just talk about what happened in our day. That is our time when we have basically our dinner time conversation. Maybe this is blasphemy, but I think it's less about when you do it. Like, there's nothing magical about dinner time specifically. It's more important that you just find a time in your routine where you can gather together and talk. Emerald had 5 kids when she divorced her husband. Then she met and married a man who had 4 kids of his own, and then they had another. She came up with a great nightly routine to help her kids get through tough times after the divorce. I'll let her tell about it.
When I went through my divorce, even though I wanted it, it was just, the children were missing their father, stuff like that. And it was just constant bickering. It was almost like they were angry, but they didn't know how to place their anger, So, and of course, that's natural. That's normal. I don't think that I wouldn't expect any less from, children or even adults at that. So that's when I started saying, what do you guys like about each other? So we just basically go around the room and then say what we like about each other. And, sometimes it's a physical trait, but as we kept doing it, they start saying, about their personality or their talent or, Mom, I love the way you cook, or, I really love how tenderhearted you are. So that's something that we would get into every single night, and it just really helped them sleep better. It helped with anxiety. It helped with stress. It helped with the tension in the family. And then I noticed it would just start to dissipate with everything that they were feeling, as far as all that tension. So I think it just even builds positivity. It builds self-esteem. It just builds a lot of things amongst each other. And I think it also builds a friendship with the children.
What makes Emerald's ritual even cozier is that they all gather on her bed, kind of in a circle. Sherilyn also gathers all her children together and snuggles on her bed as part of their bedtime routine, but that's where they do their story time. Reading to your kids is another great way to connect on a daily basis because, again, we all know we're supposed to be doing that anyway. My mother-in-law, Margene, is a pro at this. She invents fabulous, adventurous stories that kept her kids, and now mine, riveted. Margene liked to read and tell her kids stories that were touching and especially that were sad, so they could learn to feel and process deep emotions together. She joked to me once that it wasn't a successful story until everyone was crying. In a good way, of course. I love reading chapter books to my older children at bedtime, but as with Snuggles, I realized that reading to my youngest kids was just dragging out bedtime. I would rush through the books as fast as I could, skipping pages when I could get away with it, just to check that box. This year, I started reading to my 3-year-old every morning after we drop the other kids off at school instead, and it is the best. I have the energy to do voices and everything. We talk about the books and we look more closely at the pictures. Now it's one of the best parts of my day. Probably the most unlikely part of your routine that you can incorporate connection is the dreaded runaround Wendy used to drive her kids 20 minutes each way to school. At first, she dreaded that long commute, but soon she came to love it as a way to connect with her children, who were a captive audience. She tried to utilize her time in the car deliberately. They'd say family prayers, work on homework, spelling, and math facts, and just talk about their day. Emerald uses the drive to school to ask each of her kids to share their purpose for the day, whether it's to do well on a spelling test or to make a new friend. Of course, the same thing applies to after school when many moms find themselves back in the car, carting kids around town for various activities. Amy Wilson, who co-hosts one of my favorite parenting podcasts called What Fresh Hell, suggests that an even better way to connect is walking, and I would add biking together to as many activities as possible. This obviously may or may not be possible depending on where you live, but walking together, whether just around the block or toward a specific destination, can really allow for some good conversations. A couple of years ago, I decided to change my attitude about the dreaded after-school runaround and use it to connect with my kids. Sometimes that means taking all the kids to the park during one son's soccer practice and playing with them. Other times that means just taking one extra child with me to drop off another at piano lessons and working on homework together in the car. During one son's guitar lessons, my 3 youngest and I worked out a whole routine where we'd go to a secret park, which was just the lawn in front of City Hall, and we had to touch each of the trees in a specific sequence to enter the secret park. So that was a lot to fit into one tip. The rest of them are a lot shorter. The second one is to schedule time to talk. Lori and her husband Sam have a standing appointment on the first Sunday of every month with all 4 of her children. They set aside the afternoon to meet with each child individually. These meetings usually last from anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, depending on how much each child has to say. Here's Lori.
So we sit in there on these chairs in our room and we call in the kids one by one, and they come in and we just talk about life, and we ask them how things are going and what's something funny that happened this week or this last month that made you laugh out loud, or what makes you really happy. If you could name one thing that brings a lot of joy to your life right now, what would it be? What are you concerned or worried about? What are things that you feel like sometimes hold you back? So we just kind of talk about how life's going. We laugh. We've sometimes cried a little when they've shared a challenge or a time where their feelings were hurt or they're struggling in a school subject or something like that. Or one time we had a sibling that was giving another sibling a really hard time, and that sibling kind of needed to tell us that it was hard on him, and he was really frustrated. And so there's been a lot of different things that come out of it, but I think the biggest thing is it's kind of just our time. It's a safe place, it's private, and they can kind of talk about anything. We try to ask if they need help with something. What is a suggestion that they have, maybe for our family or maybe for us as parents, something that they felt like we could have handled better, or something that they really like and are grateful for in our family. We kind of ask questions, and they do a lot of the talking, frankly. It's interesting how much they like it. Even my teenagers try to kind of play it cool and like, oh yeah, okay, mom, dad want to talk to me, all right, fine. But they, if it's going wrong with one kid, it's frequent that one of them or a couple will be knocking on the door like, okay, you guys have been in there 30 minutes. When is it my turn? And I kind of have to laugh when my 17-year-old is like, hey, when is it my turn? When do you guys want to talk to me? I think when we realized and we saw their reaction to it, we knew we were onto something, that this was an important thing that they looked forward to, which was fun to see as a parent. And anyway, so we just have kind of a dialogue, and then we will take opportunities to kind of ask what they think they need to work on over the next month, something they feel like is going really well, and then how we can continue that. And then we have time where we make some suggestions and observations, and just kind of share things that we feel may help them a little bit. We had one son that was extremely competitive in sports and games, which was great, but sometimes it created conflict. And so we kind of talked about that. And we brought that to his attention, and we said, have you noticed this at all in your life? And then he kind of opened up that, yes, he had had a couple instances at school where he had been playing sports and things, and he kind of left mad, feeling mad at a friend. And so we tried to help him see that you can still be competitive and enjoy athletics, but focus on what really matters and not let the competitiveness destroy relationships or make things uncomfortable with people you care about. And so he asked us to help him remind him, and we came up with a plan, and it was a kind of a code acronym, EO, which stood for encouraging others. So we told him, as you play a game or as you're doing a sport, we want you to think of that encouraging others while you do it. I would, give him a hug and sometimes whisper in his ear as he was leaving for practice or school. I'd say, EO, and he'd just kind of give me a thumbs up. Or when he was getting out of the car, I'd say, EO, don't forget. And he would, okay, Mom, thanks. So that was kind of our code, our little thing to help him with his goal.
They also used that time to talk about safety issues. They ask their kids whether anybody has made them feel uncomfortable. They talk about things like stranger danger and pornography and just other safety concerns. I've found that one of the best ways to connect and talk to my kids is to schedule a book club. We don't have a regular set time for this, but every once in a while, I'll ask one of the kids what they want to read for book club, and I let them pick the book, and then we schedule a time to go to a restaurant, or usually we just go get dessert, and we talk about the book. And it's nice to talk about ideas and relate things that we've read in the book to our lives, and just to get out and prioritize that one-on-one time. Brooke Romney has teenage sons, and she's instituted something she calls Teen Talk Tuesday. And luckily, the rest of us can benefit from this as well. She posts a topic for Teen Talk Tuesday every Tuesday on Instagram at Brooke Romney Writes. She provides a list of excellent talking points on topics from vaping to school safety to friendship to current events. She is a master at coming up with meaningful questions and discussion points. Number 3 is to show interest in their interests. This can be really hard, especially when you really sincerely have no interest whatsoever in some of the things they're interested in. Beth, one of the hosts of another one of my favorite podcasts, Family Looking Up, had a win with this a few weeks ago. Her son came in while she was doing dishes with all of his Disney Infinity figurines and set them up on the floor and proceeded to tell her about every character and about every power. She had tons of stuff to do. The house was a mess. She was going to run around all day that day. She didn't really have time to sit and talk about these characters that she cares nothing about, but she made the time for it. My kids are always trying to show me stuff that they've built out of Legos or worlds that they've made in Minecraft. As much as possible, I try to drop what I'm doing and take a few minutes and just see what they're so proud of. But again, this can be hard, especially when it's interrupting something. There's a great episode of the What Fresh Hell podcast entitled Getting Your Kids to Talk. Co-host Margaret Abels talks about a morning that her 7-year-old son came in and snuggled into her bed, and they talked about dinosaurs and sea life for a half an hour, looking up questions on her phone, like, does the chambered nautilus bite? Does the cuttlefish have ink sacs? They even took some time to speculate as to how much cooler a chambered nautilus would look if its tentacles were just a little bit thicker. Really delving into our kids' worlds shows them that we have deeper interest in what matters to them. That said, it's also good to have a cutoff point because a mom can only take so much Pokemon. Adrian's daughters are obsessed with becoming veterinarians, so she encouraged their enthusiasm by helping them turn a corner of their basement into a clinic, complete with a reception desk, check-in forms, business cards, patient forms, a grooming station, and all the other necessary supplies. Number 4 is to play together. When I was a young mom, I used to wear out the knees on all my jeans from crawling around on the floor playing with my kids. Sadly, my jeans last a lot longer now that my 2 little people have turned into 5. I just have a lot more work to do these days. But talking to moms who still make it a priority to get down and play with their little kids has inspired me to set aside a few minutes each day for a rollicking game of hide and seek, or some good old-fashioned ball rolling with my toddler, or a round of 2 of Uno with my older kids. Jana Free is one of my motherhood mentors, especially in this area of playing with our kids. Every year, on the 4th of July, since 2005, they've had what they call the free-for-all, since their last name is Free, and they invite anyone and everyone to come. They have a giant slip and slide, they have potato sack races, and all sorts of family games set up. It is quite a party. It's really fun. But one of my best memories of being at the free-for-all was when, parents were standing around talking under the trees with our picnic lunches, and the kids were just off playing and running around together. She walked up to us and called us out and said, "What are you guys doing? This is the free-for-all. You guys are supposed to be playing with your kids, not just standing around here talking." And she kind of got us all engaged and playing with our kids. That's one of the things Jana does best. She says,
"Don't stand on the sideline. If Scott and I go to a youth dance, we dance. And, people may think we're crazy, but we have a great time. And we play with the kids. If we're at the park together, we're playing a game with the kids, right? We came up with this game called Dungeons and Dwarves. And, we play this game with the kids at the park. We're swinging on the swings. We're on the equipment. And, that's not to say that we might not sit down or whatever, but, when we're places with the kids, we're participating."
Lori is another master at orchestrating fun family activities. Some of their family favorites are an American Ninja Warrior competition in the backyard, semi-annual lip sync battles, Nerf wars, and laser tag. A few other fun and easy family activities that moms have mentioned are timed obstacle courses at the park, dodgeball with rolled up socks, park hopping, going from one park to another, hiking, geocaching, hide and seek in the dark, family movie night, paper airplane flying contests, family Olympics, bike rides, and really playing any sports together. For Nicole, the best family activities involve adventure. Close to home in Colorado, her family makes skiing trips a priority. They also love going hiking and rock climbing together. They even installed a rock climbing wall in their living room so they can have adventure right at home. But big adventures are Nicole's real specialty. Every few years, the family chooses a big trip and then works together to make it happen, saving money and finding deals. They try to go somewhere unfamiliar to everyone and centered around a peak experience, a big adventure that challenges the family. Most recently, that meant diving with sharks in the Bahamas. Number 5 is working together. Working together as a family can be every bit as important as playing together. Many moms I talk to attribute some of their best family memories to times they worked hard together on a project, such as landscaping or painting a room, and then they experience the satisfaction together of completing it. Jana finds weeding together with her children an especially great chore for connecting one-on-one, because you work right next to each other, and there's plenty of opportunities to talk because it's kind of a mindless chore. Recently, I noticed that I was spending great effort to occupy my preschooler while I did household chores, instead of finding ways we could do them together. When my oldest son was a toddler, I was really good at finding ways he could work alongside me, but I've kind of gotten out of the habit of that. So I filled the sink up with suds, and my son had a blast scrubbing pans while I filled the dishwasher. Making beds and hiding under sheets is another fun, albeit inefficient, chore to do with little ones. Nicole's family is as adventurous with work as they are with play. A few years ago, they decided to work together to finish their whole basement. It took them a year to complete, but they did all the major work themselves. One son loved the experience so much, he's now studying construction management in college. The Slade family combined hard work with service one year when they decided to build a tiny house together and give it away to a family in need for Christmas. You can read a profile about this project on my blog. Number 6 is to carve out one-on-one time. Many readers have a weekly or monthly tradition of parent-child date nights, some with both parents, some one-on-one. Sometimes all this means is that one child gets to stay up 30 minutes later than the others to play a game or watch a show with mom and dad. Other times it means that they get to choose an outing like bowling or a movie, or that they just run errands or grab a bite to eat with one parent. Reba was looking for a good way for her husband and one of her sons to connect, so she encouraged them to get scuba certified together. They had such a great time diving and studying together, and once they finished, they were able to go on a couple of diving trips together. As a bonus, now they always have a default conversation topic. Amanda has a son on the autism spectrum, and special one-on-one time was actually a part of his therapy. They set aside just 5 minutes a day for each of their 3 children. Each child had a little box with a craft they were working on, or books, or games that they liked to play with their kids. And they would just set the timer and stick to that 5 minutes, and they would do that every single day. Being able to stick to that time made it possible to fit in such a small amount of time, and it allowed them to do it consistently, but the kids really loved it. Back to Nicole again. They go big with one-on-one time as well. When each of her kids turned 10, Nicole and her husband took them on a U.S. history trip to teach them about the country and give them some individual attention. Then, when their kids graduate from high school, they get another trip with mom and dad for a more adventurous trip, such as scuba diving in the Florida Keys. Number 7 is to tell them you love them. My grandma had the cutest way of showing us that we just delighted her. She'd grab us in a hug and say, "Ooh, it's a wonderful thing in a ring-a-ding kid." I had no idea what a ring-a-ding kid was, and I still don't, but I knew it was something amazing. Simply making a practice of telling our kids we love them goes a long way. Saying it out loud is great, obviously, but sometimes it means even more if we write it down because it lasts longer. My sister Cassie keeps a journal with her son. She starts each entry by pointing out something positive she noticed him doing and ends with a question that he can answer. Then she leaves it on his bed to indicate that it's his turn. It's a great way to get him writing and a fun way to be able to tell him she's thankful for him or proud of him. Sometimes it's also a good way to apologize. He loves that it's just between them. When one of her kids is feeling down, Joy writes him a love note and leaves it for him to find on his pillow or on the counter. It's a quick, simple way to let her kids know she's on their team. Brenda found it harder to communicate love in a meaningful way when her kids were teenagers. So often, she'd write notes to them and stick them on the headboard of their beds for them to find. Brenda shares lots of other wisdom about showing love to kids in episode 69 of the Family Looking Up podcast entitled Loving Kids When They Act Unlovable, No Matter What. I highly recommend it. The 8th and final tactic is to identify pain points and find a workaround. I could do an entire episode about solving specific issues that make it hard to connect with our kids. Sometimes it's that the child has special needs. Sometimes it's just that your personalities are so different or so similar. Sometimes it's that the child is going through a difficult or especially obnoxious stage. But even in these difficult times, and probably especially at these times, we need to prioritize connecting with our kids, and we might have to get really creative. Piano practice time was a pain point in Juliana's relationship with her daughter. They would fight over when she had to play and how long. Her daughter would complain and sometimes cry about playing the piano. So Juliana decided to hire a piano tutor, a 13-year-old pianist who lives nearby, to help her daughter practice once a week, in addition to her regular piano lessons. It was a pretty simple and relatively inexpensive solution, and it turned piano practice time into a pleasant experience. Becky, at Sunkissed Becky on Instagram, used to get really annoyed because her kids would kind of swarm all over her when she was trying to work out at home. She decided instead of making this a frustrating part of her day, she'd make it a fun part, and she taught them to do the exercises right along with her. Now it's something that they all look forward to. Lisa, at Thriving Motherhood, posted on Instagram about how her little girl was stomping around the house, tearing up papers and yelling, "I hate this house." Lisa could tell something was wrong, so instead of scolding her, she scooped her up into a hug. Her little body was shaking, and then they sat down on the couch and talked. She asked her what made her so angry, and she reiterated that she hates this house and that she wanted a princess house that was pink and purple. Now this opened up a fun conversation. Instead of continuing the tantrum, they speculated about what the princess house would look like and who would live there, and they turned it into a beautiful bonding moment. Lisa could have missed this opportunity altogether by just sending to her room or yelling back at her, but she really took the opportunity to get to the bottom of the problem and solve it. Apologizing is another of the most powerful ways that we can connect with our kids. They need to see that we make mistakes and that we acknowledge that we make mistakes. My mom was really good at this. Whenever she would be too hard on me for one thing or another, or just do something that she wasn't proud of, she would come into my bedroom at night and sit on the foot of my bed and apologize, and we'd talk it over. Those are some really meaningful memories to me. It helps your kids to know that their parents make mistakes too. There are obviously a lot of other ways to connect with our kids, and it will be different not only for every mom, but for every distinct relationship each mom has with each child. The key is to find out what kind of connection works and to make time for it. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. I'll include links for some of the wonderful podcasts that I've referenced in here and some others that I discovered along the way in my show notes. I'll also include links to full profiles of many of the women I've mentioned here on my blog. I'd love to find out how you mom. There are 4 main ways to add your voice to this How She Moms community. First, you can email me at whitney@howshemoms.com. Or you can go to my contribute page at howshemoms.com and find out what topics I'm currently researching. There will be questionnaires that you can fill out there. You can also follow me on Instagram to see daily tips about how different moms approach the current topic. Finally, you can sign up to receive email questionnaires for each new topic so you can contribute your ideas. Special thanks to my mom for playing my theme music. She's been playing this song since I was a little girl, and to me, it's part of the soundtrack of motherhood.